As global tensions continue to rise, the specter of trade wars and geopolitical maneuvering looms larger than ever. With the return of Donald Trump to the White House, experts are warning that smaller nations may soon find themselves navigating a treacherous path between two great powers, China and the United States. In a recent interview with Fortune, Robert Kaplan, a noted author and geopolitical analyst, expressed concerns about the implications of this increasingly polarized international landscape. Kaplan argues that the three dominant global powers, the US, China and Russia, are all experiencing decline, which can lead to aggressive posturing as they seek to reclaim their influence. Great powers in decline can tend to be very aggressive, he explained, highlighting the precarious position of countries like Singapore and Australia that have historically benefited from trading with China while relying on US security. However, with tensions escalating, these nations may soon be forced to choose sides. This shift is already evident in Southeast Asia, where countries such as Thailand, Malaysia and Indonesia are exploring membership in organizations like BRICS, which serve as a counterweight to Western alliances. At the same time, leaders like Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong are cautioning against the necessity of choosing between Washington and Beijing. The complexity of international relations means that smaller countries face an increasingly difficult balancing act. Kaplan's analysis points to the changing nature of governance in China under President Xi Jinping, contrasting it with the more market-oriented approach of his predecessors like Deng Xiaoping. This shift has resulted in a more centralized and autocratic economic strategy, which Kaplan believes risks destabilizing the very complex financial landscape that has been foundational to China's rise. China's economic recovery post-COVID has been sluggish, with weak domestic consumption and a prolonged property crisis contributing to fears of deflation. The implications of a potential conflict between the US and China, particularly over Taiwan, a key player in the global semiconductor market, are significant. Kaplan warns that while financial markets have thus far remained resilient, a full-blown war could have devastating effects on supply chains and global economic stability. Asia really is the most important part of the world, he said, underscoring the need for global business interests to hope for a containment of the US-China rivalry. As these dynamics unfold, countries around the world are re-evaluating their foreign policy strategies. China, for its part, is keenly aware of the possibilities that arise from tensions between the US and its European allies, with the potential for renewed tariffs and trade wars. Particularly as the US administration adopts a more aggressive stance, China may see an opportunity to strengthen its ties with Europe as a counterbalance. Looking ahead, the geopolitical landscape is set to become even more complex. Smaller nations will need to navigate these treacherous waters, carefully balancing their economic interests against the backdrop of great power competition. The next few years will be critical in determining how these relationships evolve and what strategies nations will adopt to safeguard their sovereignty and interests in an increasingly multipolar world. As Kaplan warns, the choices made now will shape the future of international relations for decades to come. As the world grapples with shifting economic landscapes, few topics are as critical as the ongoing discourse surrounding trade wars, tariffs, and the broader implications for global technology competition. Recently, China has found itself at the center of this dialogue, particularly as it prepares for the upcoming two sessions, an annual political gathering where key policies are discussed and set for the year ahead. With the backdrop of a nascent trade war with the United States and internal economic pressures, the decisions made during these sessions could shape the trajectory of China's economic policies and its position in the global technology arena. The recent announcement of a 25% tariff on all imports of steel and aluminum into the U.S. by President Donald Trump has intensified the existing trade tensions. While the immediate impact of these tariffs on China's steel industry appears limited, given that less than 2% of U.S. steel imports come from China, the broader ramifications are significant. Su Tianchen, a senior economist with the Economist Intelligence Unit, observes that the tariffs will have little direct impact on China, though some second-order effects may occur. This nuanced reality highlights the interconnectedness of global trade, While tariffs might aim to protect domestic industries in the US, they can inadvertently shape the strategies of countries like China, which may seek to bolster exports to other markets in response to shifting demand patterns. The U.S. steel industry, facing its own challenges, has long been plagued by overcapacity and a reliance on imports from countries like Canada and Mexico. With China's steelmakers increasingly dependent on exports due to sluggish domestic demand, the tariffs could provoke a reassessment of how China navigates its steel production and export strategies. As Luna Sun, a journalist based in Beijing, notes, Chinese steelmakers are more concerned about sluggish domestic demand and persistent industry overcapacity, underscoring the need for China to pivot its focus to more sustainable economic models. Amid these developments, the question arises: how effective are tariffs in achieving their intended goals? The Economic Policy Institute has argued that while tariffs can provide temporary protection for certain sectors, they cannot singularly resolve deeper economic issues. For instance, high tariffs on imports are likely to invoke retaliation from trading partners, as seen during the previous administration's tariffs that led to significant retaliation from China, severely impacting U.S. exporters like Boeing. In essence, while tariffs may serve as a tactical tool in the short term, they do not constitute a comprehensive industrial policy. The complexities of tariffs extend beyond mere economic calculus. They are often seen as a regressive tax that disproportionately affects lower-income households. This reality complicates the narrative surrounding tariffs, as the burden often falls on consumers who face higher prices for goods. A report from the Economic Policy Institute clarifies that American households will bear most of the burden of higher tariffs, highlighting the indirect consequences of such policies on domestic consumers and businesses. As China approaches the two sessions, it is essential to consider how these discussions might reflect a strategic pivot in response to both domestic challenges and international pressures. The Chinese government may potentially adopt policies that not only mitigate the immediate impacts of U.S. tariffs but also address long-term sustainability, particularly in high-tech sectors that are increasingly becoming battlegrounds for global competition. Looking ahead, the evolving landscape of international trade and the intricacies of tariff policies will continue to shape economic strategies on both sides of the Pacific. The decisions made during the two sessions could signal a new era of economic policy for China, one that may either fortify its standing in the global market or exacerbate existing tensions with the United States. As the world watches closely, it remains to be seen how these dynamics will unfold and what implications they will hold for the future of global trade and technology competition. In an era marked by rapidly evolving geopolitical landscapes and technological advancements, China's burgeoning influence in Africa stands out as a significant development. As the United States continues to retreat from its historical role in international aid, particularly under the Trump administration, China is seizing the opportunity to forge strategic partnerships across the continent. This trend not only highlights the shifting dynamics of global power but also raises questions about the long-term implications for U.S. interests abroad. Recent reports indicate that China is actively building alliances in Africa, a move that seems to be a direct response to U.S. foreign aid cuts. The Trump administration's decision to reduce funding to various global initiatives has left a vacuum that China is eager to fill. By investing in infrastructure projects and technology transfers, China is not only enhancing its economic footprint but also gaining political leverage in a region that has traditionally looked to the U.S. for support. China's presence in Africa is not just about economics, it's about establishing a foothold in a geopolitically strategic region. Noted as senior analyst at a leading think tank, the implications of this shift are profound. As China invests in telecommunications, energy, and transportation infrastructure, it is creating a network of dependencies that could influence African nations' policies in favor of Beijing. This growing relationship may also lead to enhanced military cooperation, as evidenced by recent media reports of Chinese surveillance activities in the region. Such developments could pose challenges to U.S. efforts to maintain its influence and safeguard its interests in Africa. In a related context, the security landscape in the Indo-Pacific region is becoming increasingly complex. Japan has reported sightings of Russian and Chinese spy ships near its territorial waters, raising alarms about the collaborative surveillance efforts between these two nations. This increased military cooperation underscores the shifting alliances and the potential for heightened tensions in the region. As nations grapple with these challenges, the need for robust defense strategies becomes more pressing. Adding to the technological competition, researchers from the Changchun Institute of Optics, Fine Mechanics and Physics in China have unveiled a new airship capable of detecting stealth aircraft such as the US F-35 from over 1,240 miles away. Utilizing advanced infrared sensors, these airships could significantly alter the dynamics of aerial warfare, challenging the effectiveness of stealth technology that has been a cornerstone of U.S. military strategy. These airships represent a potential game-changer in aerial surveillance and engagement, commented Christopher McFadden, an expert on military technology. If successful, this development could complicate operations for U.S. forces in contested airspace. As tensions escalate on multiple fronts, the interplay between economic ambitions and military advancements will shape the future of international relations. With China aggressively pursuing its interests in Africa and beyond, combined with its technological innovations and military capabilities, the United States faces a critical juncture. The ongoing scrutiny of U.S. export control policies following the revelations about a Chinese spy balloon containing American technology further illustrates the urgent need for the U.S. to reassess its strategies in an increasingly multipolar world. Moving forward, it will be critical for U.S. policymakers to adapt to this new landscape. Developing stronger alliances with traditional partners and investing in technological advancements will be essential to countering China's influence and maintaining a competitive edge. As nations navigate these complex geopolitical waters, the coming years promise to be pivotal in defining the balance of power on the global stage.